Hey, I'm Michael, and this is Michael in the Middle. It's an intergenerational relational podcast for people who are interested in better human interaction. I'm glad you're here. Whoo, boy, it is a beautiful day here on the back deck in Old Hickory, Tennessee, where Sarah and I live. The sun's coming up over the horizon. There's a song lyric for about everything.
Eggs on the griddle.
This is Ron Zero Jackson, Dr. Ronald Jackson, professor, best friend, dear brother, friend to many. That's my friend Ron over there on the other side. We're doing a part 2, buddy. How about that?
It's kind of fun.
You know, you were
Michael in the Middle. Yeah,
Michael in the Middle, episode 2, as I recall. I mean, I think it was the second episode.
Yeah.
And I was just getting into it, and we were able to sit on your patio by the pool.
Yeah.
And our friend Rob came over with nice cameras and shot it in 4K, and I thought, man, I this is what I want, for every episode, because the previous my inaugural episode, Rob Walls came over with a 2-camera setup, and it was amazing. Reality.
Yeah, the cicadas were going too.
Oh yeah, they were in full voice, no doubt about that.
Or if you're from South Alabama, the locust. We always called those locusts when we were kids. I don't know why. Something to do with the plagues or something, I think.
Yeah. So a little over a year later, you and I are having a conversation again. This time I'm on the deck behind my house, and you're in your office at Mid-American Nazarene University, and
there's a lovely ceiling tile in the.
Yes. Well, I mean, they serve their purpose, Ron.
Yes, they do.
Don't despise the gift.
No. One of them came loose, and all the cold air from upstairs just came right down on top of me. I was like, okay, these do serve a kind of a nice function. They kept the squirrel out too that was in there last year.
So I'm going to show here at the outset some pictures of that extend back to when we first met. And
please.
These pictures are from
hair.
the 1980 and then 1981 Trevecca Nazarene University yearbooks, the DARDA. DARDA. Everybody says, what's a DARDA? And all I know to say is it's a yearbook at Trevecca. I'm sure. I'm sure there's a broader meaning of the word.
Yeah, there is. I'm sure.
Yeah. I don't think I ever knew it. But at any rate, you went to the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa after attending community college. And you're from LA, or Lower Alabama, as they say back home, right?
Yes, as they say, yes. Because there ain't nothing down there you can identify with. South of Montgomery, it's just all Lower Alabama, unless you get over towards Mobile. So.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
My wife and I, Sarah. I don't have to refer to her as my wife. Sarah and I went to a ministry retreat in Orange Beach, Alabama last week, and we took the road less traveled through Flomaton and on down, and saw the sign for, you turn this way to go to Bruton, or you turn this way to go through Flomaton on the way down to now.
Yeah, I'm from East Bruton. That's even tinier. It's a suburb of Bruton. If Bruton has suburbs.
Okay.
All the Jacksons are either from North Bruton or East Bruton, and don't ask me why. East Bruton's at least a town. North Bruton's just a place. And when folks ask where I'm from, I'm between Flomaton, Andalusia, and Opp, and they go, Well, that don't help.
You, I I think you may know this, but Sarah's father came from Antioch, which is just outside of
Yep,
Andalusia,
yep,
you
yep.
know, and
We talk
so
about that often. So
yeah,
yeah,
roots run down deep. Um, it and it's not just in the South where people talk about their family roots and all of that, but you go off to Tuscaloosa and get a 4-year degree. And remind me now, was it history?
history. Yep.
And that was because you thought you might teach, or
I wanted no, I didn't. Maybe all I wanted to do was get a degree. I uh, I thought I might go back and teach. I didn't know you had to have an education degree. I just thought I'll get me a history degree and pull up to W.S. Neal High School and tell them, "Here's my degree. Can I teach history?" And and they just said, "Well, did you take any education classes?" No, no, I just took history.
okay,
That's what you needed to do. But I was also thinking about law school, and didn't check enough. First generation, first person. I had an aunt go to medical school that was a nurse, and but that was it in our family. I'm the first one to ever get a 4-year degree from a from a liberal arts university,
but
and all I wanted to do was go to college and then figure out later. But I was going to go to law school. If I had to do it
law
all over
school.
again, I'd have done
Okay,
English, because English is a much better major if you're going to go to law school, because it's all about the language. I thought you had to understand how to argue the past.
yeah.
So anyway, and I
So,
love history. So
but didn't you do some acting as well?
yeah, I was a double major. I was history, and then I had a second major in speech communication and theater. And so I'd gotten in a show my junior year. I was only there 2 years, and got cast in a show, French absurdist theater, Ubu Wa, and I played 17 characters, kind of a Robin Williams thing. Before there was Robin Williams, I played 5 and 6 at a time on stage, and voiced them all. They put this pith helmet on me with two
That's
uh,
amazing.
things going out, and they had cardboard cutouts hanging on them. And each one of those people, sometimes I had 3, a couple times I had 6, and uh, I uh, I would talk, and they would. And all these people were getting executed, and all they would do was cut them off the thing and take them up and throw them in this hole. And they eventually threw me in the hole, and then I would come back as another one, and that was my. And then we all had bit parts after that. But I had a byline in the Crimson and White. That's the campus newspaper,
That's
and I
that's
still
so
have that
cool.
copy. So I all I remember about it was the guy said I did whatever I did with verve. And, okay, good. I used some verve. So I was excitable.
So you finish your degree at Alabama. You have a call to ministry, and you end up at this place in Nashville that you didn't really know a lot about. And
No,
you get up there, and it looks like you just got into everything, because as an actor, you found out about a play called A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, and I have visual evidence. And you
Hank,
know,
I got the lead, which I couldn't believe.
yeah,
And
yeah, and you ended up working with some amazing people in that show,
oh
actually,
yeah, well, a lot
including
of
Dr. Lena Haggai Welch, who's
yep,
still teaching at Trevecca.
yeah, which
Um,
was
but so
incredible.
there you are as an actor. It looked like you're really striving for affirmation, because you were in every club possible. It appears to me.
President of the Ministerial Association, though, please.
Yeah.
And
So
he's just
uh,
been
you
resurrected.
you were even a part of the Young Republicans. I don't know if you would be a part of the old Republicans now, but
No, none. Unaffiliated. Thank you very
and
much.
and, and tell me about all those buttons.
Oh yeah, well, I've still got all those buttons. I loved collecting political buttons. It just was kind of fun. And the Deep South Republicans were everybody in my. I knew one Republican. It was my or two. It was my Uncle Byron and Aunt Hazel. They were the only two. They would sit at the Republican primary, and no one would vote,
Yeah.
but they were there. And when you won the Democratic primary in the Escambia County back in the '60s, you'd won the election because it was over at that point. There was a Republican candidate, but that was a joke. And so I had George Wallace buttons. I have my most prized is a Nixon now, and they're probably not worth anything. But remember Anderson when he ran as an independent. John Anderson. I've got a John Anderson button, and we got a bunch of Reagan stuff because that's really when we were coming into it.
That's
That was
fantastic.
we were doing it. So it's just kind of fun.
You,
History and politics kind of went together for a while. And I love that connection between it.
yeah,
And I enjoy politics now. It's just so divisive. It's no fun anymore. Everybody's
yeah.
hateful. Just don't be so hateful.
So the next picture here,
Oh,
you know,
God.
to kind of sort of, I guess, redeem it all. You were also a part of the Christian Ministry Association. And
Yes, that's right.
so,
Yeah.
uh,
Tau, Mu, Alpha. We changed it. We just put Greek
okay,
letters for
all right,
Travaglia Imperial Association, and we made Tau Mu Alpha shirts.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
I didn't know that you're supposed to do spiritual things. We had movie nights, and we sponsored Brian's song one time, and all the ministers got the ministerial students. We went to intramurals, and we got the striped referee shirts. Made a goal post, and passed. It was a 2 reel because it was a 16 millimeter
Right.
2 reel projector, and Brian Piccolo didn't die. We showed Brian's song. Brian Piccolo didn't die till the second reel, and so while we were changing reels, we passed out Kleenex to the whole audience, so everybody would have it when Piccolo died. So, I love Brian Piccolo. So, I just had a lot of fun. It just was fun.
I love Brian Piccolo, and so I'm asking you when you go to bed tonight to ask God to love him too. Oh man,
It was
yeah.
an
Hey,
ABC movie of the week.
but that was during your first year at Trevecca. You dove right in. You're in the big middle of everything. You even ran for student government.
Yep,
Um,
got it handed to me, but again, I didn't know. I ran it fun. But I ran for spiritual life. I made a biplane out of funeral boxes, out of pasteboard boxes that caskets came in. So they're huge, big cardboard boxes. It was a dual biplane that you could get in. You got in it sideways and then turned like this, and it fit on you. And I walked around in it, legs coming out underneath the fuselage. I wore a scarf, and I rigged a coat hanger up in it that made the scarf go out back like
it was brilliant.
it was, and it said vote zero. And I'm almost glad now that I didn't win. I ran against Dwight. Who runs against Dwight? the Moody, the man. And but the Lord told me I needed to run because I needed to lose is what needed to happen. But the school newspaper showed the tail of that airplane in the dumpster with the big zero, because all it said was vote zero, but there was a zero on the tail. And it said that the school newspaper said the agony of defeat. That was awesome. Yeah.
It was a little bit like well, I mean, it was kind of like not a lot of us really knew who Walter Mondale was when he ran against, but everybody knew Ronald Reagan, you know.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and the other thing is I did, and they were tasteful, but when you walked along the Cascade, I made Burma shave sign kind of things, like limericks as you were going to vote for zero. Had a rooster, set him on the fence, crowed for zero because he had good sense, I don't know, stuff like that. And it just did for spiritual life. It was just really not the right campaign. So,
and what would a discussion like this be without a picture, from the senior page in the yearbook?
No.
The very few pages that we could afford to print in color in the yearbook, we would honor the seniors, and so
Yes, with
here
the
you are
untrimmed beard and the,
with
yeah,
with
all its
hair.
glory. Hair. That's all that is. That's a hair photo. Oh my God, I'm not sure my kids have even seen that. Oh my gosh, that is frightening. Sheesh.
Um, and then the conversation took a serious turn. Um,
Oh wow.
I look back at those pictures, and I look at where we are now, over 40 years later, and you and I were together last week with along with several other of our friends. Um, we spoke at the memorial service for our friend Don Garrison, Finley Knowles, Janice Lovell, Kevin Olmitz, the pastor at Nashville First Church of the Nazarene. I was thinking about the fact that several of us were involved in the service who had been in school with Don and in school with a lot of other people. Janice's husband, Chuck, passed away
Yeah.
several years ago with leukemia, and when you're young and you're running for office with creative marketing plans, and um, you know, I I look back on my college years, and um, I remember a few things from my classes, but man, I was just so immersed in everything that was going on in in the world of Trevecca at that time, and to a certain extent, the world beyond. But you're not thinking about what life's going to be like 40 years down the road.
No, you're not.
And I guess just having been to several funerals lately, and I mean, in the job that I have at Trevecca, one of the things that I end up doing is going to funerals of people who have been connected to the university across the years, and so when you're 20, 22 years old, you know what the word legacy means by definition, but you can't really know what legacy means until you've lived a while.
Yeah.
And so I do want to kind of talk to you about, as you and I, you know, approach the closing time, as it were, on our vocational careers. Um, when you look back, what are some of the things, Ron, that have meant the most to you? You've been a children's pastor, a youth pastor, a college pastor, a, a, a dean of student life, and now a professor of youth ministry. What what do you wish you could have told the guy there in the color picture in the yearbook? About where life's going to go, and how you get there.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to say I've done everything right in my life, because that'd be a gross, misstatement. But I think I was fortunate early on, and I think it's because uh, I never took for granted what I had. Uh, uh, Coming to faith at a big state school, um, and I loved going to Alabama, and I got it on today. I'm a huge fan. It's a part of my identity that I graduated from the University of Alabama. I'm proud as I can be to be a member of that community. But the closest friends I have, the people that I have kept up with my entire life, there's a handful from Alabama, but it's a small handful. It's a matter of fact, it's less than a handful. But the people that I've been closest to across the decades are the relationships that I made at Trevecca, because I was savoring every minute of that experience. And that's what I talk to my students about. You're going to regret blowing by some of this stuff. You're going to regret. I had a roommate that didn't want to leave the room. He just would go to class, and we'd go to the room. And I remember telling him before fall retreat, I was trying to be the good roommate and trying to encourage and trying to get. and I said, I'm going to retreat. It was early in the year. I said, I've got to meet people. I can't stay in this room anymore. I'm going to go to activities. I'm going to go meet people. I'm going to get immersed in this community. So I jumped in the deep end of the pool at Trevecca. You've already talked about that. And I didn't take anything for granted. And I've never ever 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 gotten over what the Lord did for me. That song, He Brought Me Out of the Miry Clay. I was basically 2 years at Alabama, depressed most of the time. I was away from home. I wasn't a part of any kind of community. I worked to put myself through school. So as soon as class was over, I rushed off to Kmart and worked till they closed. Went home and studied, got up and went to class and worked the next day. I worked almost 40 hours a week and went to college and tried to have a little bit of campus life. I went to every football game, but that's about the only thing I did. I never went to a dance. I never went to a social. I never did anything at Alabama but work, go to football, and go home. And at Trevecca, it was completely opposite. I worked early morning in the cafeteria and loved it, and would wash pots and pans late at night. But the rest of the time, whatever was going on, that's where I was at. So what I tell my students, and here's the answer, the direct answer to your question. Most of us spend most of our, or a lot of us spend our life after things like are on my wall back there: degrees, diplomas, accomplishments, winning this thing, beating that person, getting this contest done, getting this accolade, getting another title in front of our name.
Yeah.
People, relationships. That's all that matters. That's really all that matters, is pouring yourself into people. And so what sustained me across the years, what I look forward to, what gives me energy is being around people, serving people, helping people. If I can help someone, I'll stop whatever I'm doing to go help somebody. I take that approach in my classes. I try to help my students pass. I don't try to fail them on purpose. Some of them work really hard and are able to accomplish an F in one of my classes. It can be done. But it won't be because I didn't try to help you. It'll be because you just can you come to class. Half of them fail because they don't come to class.
Yeah.
And I came back from Don's service the other day and went straight into class. Flew home and taught the introduction to ministry class, which is full of freshmen. And I told them, I said, this is going to go right by you. And they looked, some of them looked at me like I had COVID or something when I was talking. You know, I don't want to hear this, because no one wants to hear. But I said, potentially, you're sitting by someone, you're a minister. You may be burying somebody in this room one day. You may be standing up and do what I had to do yesterday, which is get up and stand and talk about a dear friend and carry him. We carried Don to the place he's going to rest and put his body in the ground until the resurrection. That's where it'll be. Until Don is resurrected, that's where his body will be, until it's joined together. And you're going to have to do that. Pay attention, because this is the stuff. It's not the big things. It's the little stuff. It's the noise late at night that scares everybody. It's the car running out of gas. It's I dropped my laptop on my toe when I left your house. Yeah. And it looked like a big plum. And that's the kind of stuff. That's what living is. That's what life is. That's what you'll remember. I'll remember this toe for a while. It's broke, by the way. I'm just suing.
Well, we've already consulted lawyers and insurance agents, so I mean, I know I know you're trying to prepare for retirement. So
Yeah, well, it won't be me suing. It'll be my insurance company because I've told them y'all are liable. Oh goodness, sorry.
you 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 have master's and doctoral degrees, um, Nazarene Seminary, Olivet Nazarene University. I want to delve for a minute, and we talked about it briefly when we did the the first episode together, back in, well, it's been about 14 months now, as I recall. And you, as a youth, as a lifelong youth minister or minister to young people, you chose a dissertation topic that really fascinates me, and how young people find their identity. And there's so much talk about identity right now, as it relates to, uh, gender and sexuality and those kinds of things. And I'm not really interested in trying to figure all of that out. I believe God has a design for us as humans, but, um, without trying to do a full on dissection of that whole subject, what were some bottom line observations that your dissertation brought forward as it relates to how one, um, can identify with their identity, or identify it or come to terms with it, and it's about so much more than those sorts of things, gender and sexuality, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's about the simple question for adolescence, and it's up through 25. We're not our cornbread's not done till we're in our mid 20s, and that's as much cultural as it is culture, uh, development, and physiological. Our bodies aren't fully done. Your cornbread isn't done. You're not finished cooking in your brain until then. By the way, which is why messing with alcohol as a young person is so dangerous because your brain's not done and it has an effect. I mean, it has an effect when your brain is done. It makes your brain crazy, but it's even worse. So that's a whole aside. I don't know how I got into that. Anyway,
you're
it
saying you're saying alcohol as a younger person has a
is
more profound impact
much
on the
more
brain.
harmful than it is when you're older. When your body is fully developed to be able to process it. Your body can't process it fast enough to keep the harm from your brain from happening when you're young. And there's
Mm,
all kinds of science on that. No one wants to talk about it, but that's fine. Just
yeah.
let it go. There's all kinds of science on a lot of stuff no one wants to talk about. And but here's the seminal question of existence, and this is from Eric Erickson and all the folks that have gone before. But I think it's as old as I know it is. It's as old as people. The question is, who am I? Who am I going to be? Not what am I going to do? Not who am I going to marry? Not what career am I going to have? Who am I going to be? Who am I? When those things come together, because the other piece that happens, and you talk about gender identity, you talk about identity is for the believer, who am I in Christ? Okay. The reason it's so critical in adolescence is those things are coming together all at the same time. The as a person we have to answer that question, but as Christians we have to answer that question. I just went to a conference this week and they used the term deconstruction, but they used it in a whole different way because everybody wigged out last time people started talking about deconstruction. But until you do that, okay, so we get a faith, we inherit a faith. We either get it from our faith community, we get it from the person who introduced us to Christ. A rare person, and it happens, engages with Scripture in some hotel room or has some encounter like Paul on the road to Damascus. We make those the norm. That's not the norm. The norm is somebody introduced you to Jesus. All right. So they introduce you, you start walking in this faith, and this is holiness, by the way. You start walking in this faith and you begin to make that faith your own, not just the faith of the person that gave it to you. Because we all, based on a recommendation, go to dinner. Based on a recommendation, ask somebody out. Based on a perception or a feeling, we make a choice. But the longer we stay in that choice, are we going to live on the recommendation, or is it going to be our choice? So we do that. We do that as I did it as a 21-year-old. I made faith my own, but my identity almost was done by that point. I had already decided who I was. So those didn't come together in such an axis like it does for young people, which is why it's so critical to have youth ministries and young adult ministries, or what the literature now is calling the emerging adult ministries in the church, so that as those processes of who am I as a person, who am I going to be, and who am I in Christ come together, we can be there when they reconstruct. Because until I do that, so here's the way identity formation happens. I'm 2, 5, 7, 10, 12, 15. My parents have told me my whole life who I am. You're Michael Johnson. You're the oldest in our family. This is the way our family operates. We do these kind of things. Michael, as long as your feet under my table, this is what you're going to do. Every kid gets that from somebody. That's a gift. That's a gift God gives us, to be raised by people that will point us somewhere. But when you reach the end of that process, you start asking yourself those questions. Well, they told me I have to do this. Do I really have to do this? Maybe I don't have to do this way. Maybe I can do it another way. And once you and until you can, this is the hardest part for parents. The most difficult part to teach churches and congregations is until that young person sets aside everything you've taught them, they can't pick it up for themselves. All they're doing is living in the faith you taught them. So they have to deconstruct. They have to set it aside so that they can reconstruct it with the Holy Spirit's help, and the culture, I mean, the community and the family, whoever their influencers are, and they can reconstruct that as who they are. And when they do that, you'll never knock them off, because it'll be theirs. So how did I go? What did you ask? Don't get me started talking about the topic. That's all I'll do.
No, I mean, I asked the leading question, and I know that you know a lot about how this works. So,
I
I
can see my
appreciate.
brother. When I talk to my brother and I get to doing what I did to you a minute ago, I'll watch him go. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And you should have done that. It would have cued me.
That
I see
that's
my
the be
students nodding. I know it's time for a story or something.
yeah, yeah. That's the beautiful thing about a podcast,
Yeah.
because we're just putting it out there, and we don't know for sure
Yeah.
what the look in people's
Yeah.
eyes
But
are
if
while
if
they're.
if if we get reports of cars going in the ditches, we'll know. Okay, Jackson, get back to the topic. They're nodding off out there.
I uh I know you got to go teach a class here in a few minutes, and I gotta go get to the office myself. But I want to let you build off of what you just talked about in terms of how that process of one's identity is so shaped by things that happen when you're younger. But how does that translate to wanting to do whatever you have to do to get back for a friend's funeral so you can say some words over them? I mean, what is it about the quality of certain relationships? I guess that's a question I'm asking myself, that causes us to want to be present in the really significant moments in a person's life, particularly as we get down toward the end. And I mean, we're in our 60s, Ron. I hope we live to be 90 or 100, you know. But um, what are some of the kinds of things that are really giving you life right now, as you look back across your life?
Yeah. Well, it's you at the uh, senior adult pastors, and I've had I what they started me as the the first church I worked in. They made me the Sam's pastor, which meant I just drove the old people to the Sam's events that they went to. And senior adult ministries, is that what Sam's was? I can't remember. And I had nothing to do, but I remember talking to our Dennis Apple was the unbelievable senior adult pastor at our church, and he told me, he said, Ron, uh, the elderly validate their existence through story, and you validate them when you take the time to listen to their stories.
Mm.
When you can sit and listen to your daddy. Michael calls me every now and then, and I just love it. When, first of all, to have Talmadge call me is pretty awesome. Oh,
Yeah.
excuse me, I got to take this. It's Talmadge, and you don't have to tell anybody. They go, "Oh, Talmadge, you take that." And now he calls me during class. Sometimes I can't take it, but I just love to hear, and I ask him questions about his life, because what is happening now in our age and older is we're trying to say I mattered. What I did made a difference. And so as we listen to people telling those stories, as we let people engage at that level, and are kind enough, unlike my children, Dad, you've told that story to me 50 times, to kind enough not to remind them of that, and just let them have their moment when they shined a little bit in the past. But your initial question was what I really was thinking of. What drives us to come back all the way to Nashville to attend a friend's funeral that, Don's already gone. He won't know I'm there. And I think if we lose this in the Christian church, if we lose this in Christianity, we've lost what this whole thing is about. In our rush of the past 20 years to be relevant in culture, we want the church to matter. So we work really hard to make sure the church matters. We want the church to have a say. So we work really hard so that we can elect the right leaders and get the right mouthpieces and the right folks out there, and put out the press conferences so the word can get out, so the church can have a say. So we want to matter and we want to have a say. But what Christianity is about is what drove me back to that funeral. One word: love. I love Don Garrison, and I needed to honor him. I needed to remind his family, which all of us leave. Some of us stay close to our family, and some of us don't. And whether he was close or not, his family needed to hear some of the things that we said, and they did. And I think we ministered to them. But love is what motivated that. And a side part of love is honor. A side part of love is respect. A side part of love is discipline. All those things flow from love, not from responsibility,
Mm.
not from a message that we need to get out there, not because we need to matter. It's because we love.
Yeah.
And we don't need to love.
Mm.
We love because,
Mm.
pure and simple. I love because I was loved.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my answer.
Uh, I love that, and I love you.
I love
That's a
you too,
really,
Michael.
really good way to wrap it up. Um, I mean, it's no joke that we literally have to stop our conversations sometimes, whether it's on the phone or even in person.
Well, the
Yeah,
family throws things
I
at us.
got to go,
I have to go.
and that's literally the case right now.
Yeah.
I need to
I
leave.
gotta go.
Um, but thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
being who you are in the lives of so many, but especially in our lives as a family. You're one of our son's favorite people. That's the thing about lives like ours that have been so intertwined in institutions like universities and in churches and that sort of thing. And I'm sure it happens for other people's families too. I just know our context. Our boys are friends with our friends, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
my daughter and I talked about you. Both of us talked about you yesterday, and not
Yeah,
just in response to I'm talking to Michael tomorrow. It was about other things. It's
yeah.
like it's a
And
regular part of the convo.
maybe that's one of the greatest gifts of all, in terms of being a parent, when you see your kids investing themselves in relationships with their peers, but also appreciating the friendships they had with their parents' friends too. Hey, thanks for dropping
You're welcome.
in.
You're welcome.
Like we always say on Michael in the Middle, um, um, get out there in the middle of doing something good for somebody else, because it'll make a difference in their lives and your lives too. I'm going to pay a quick word of tribute to the man who gave me this pullover. His name's Jim McCullough. He's like the big brother I never had. Growing up, he stayed with our family a lot. He attached to us. Won't go into his whole story, but he sent me this after he saw um, the jerseys that I had made, custom made, and he mimicked the little logo here. He even sent me a coffee mug with it. I found out yesterday that Jim's been placed in hospice care,
Oh,
and
goodness.
it reminded me again that the investment we make in each other sometimes can end up being painful, but it it can also be one of the greatest joys of our lives. And regardless of whether there's joy or pain, it's still worth the effort to make a difference in someone else's life. And you've made a difference in mine, Ron, and thousands of others across your life. And it's not over yet.
No,
Um, I,
no.
I think there's more to come,
All right.
and maybe
Love
even a third Michael in the Middle episode someday. I don't know.
annual
Have a
event.
great day, man.
I will. See you, man.
Thanks for joining us, folks. We'll see you next time.